Welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, 3PGC, is a non-profit organisation committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Sidney Banks to people throughout the world. And our guest speaker today is Christine Heath, who many of you will know. Christine is the co-founder and executive director of the Hawaii Counselling and Education Centre since 1985. And she has nearly 40 years' experience as a marriage and family therapist. She met Sidney Banks in 1981 and has been sharing her understanding of the three principles since then. She was instrumental in setting up one of the first three principles-based clinics in the world. Christine has developed three principles-based programs in domestic violence, anger management, outpatient substance abuse, adolescent anger management, and victim impact. She's certified as a substance abuse counsellor and is an approved supervisor for the Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. She provides training programs for graduate and postgrad therapists, offering training, coaching, consultation, and seminars based on the three principles locally and internationally to professionals and lay people. Christine has served on the board of directors of the 3PGC since its inception and dedicates her life to sharing the principles with the world. Welcome and thank you, Christine.
Thank you. I think I need to update that. I was just thinking like, oh man, I've been a therapist for almost 50 years now. Like, how bad is that? Lucky that I could still do my work, but, and, you know, I was interviewing graduate students this week for the next round of interns. And I was talking to them and I said, like, you probably don't even know any other therapists that are still working that have been around this long and that are still jazzed about what they do. And they're like, yeah, truly, you know, most people that have been a therapist for a long time are really kind of jaded and kind of like bored and like low energy in terms of helping people. So I was like, well, you won't get that from us. So you're going to have to be prepared for a lot of change and for learning new things. So when I interview people, I try to convince them not to come. And then anybody that comes after that, I know they really get touched by something. It was kind of funny because what happened is, you guys will get a kick out of this. I was interviewing people. I had like 9 or 10 people to interview. And I usually kind of listen to them to see how intellectually attached they are to a certain kind of theory. And if they are, I don't generally take them. So this woman came on and I was interviewing and I said, well, like, is there any kind of theory or anything that you really like? And she said, well, I really like attachment theory and EMDR, which is waving your finger and thinking you're programming somebody's mind. Anyway, and I told her, I said, oh, you don't want to come here because that's like kind of the opposite of what we do. And I'm literally writing, this person is not acceptable. And she said, well, is there anything I could like look at or do? And I said, well, you could go listen to these videotapes by Sidney Banks. And she said, Sidney Banks. And I was like, it's just kind of like, I woke up, you know, and I said, yeah. She goes, I've heard of him. I said, okay. And she said, is this a three principles? I said, yes, it is. And so now I'm laughing at myself totally because I'm going to write this person off. I already have a thought about it, right? And so she said, yeah, my best friend in Kona learned about it from her boyfriend, who obviously was somebody's patient, right, from our clinic. And she said she's talked about it and said how much it helped her and how great it was. And I said, oh, okay, well, so I have people do two things. I have them look at the website, 3PGC, my Hawaii Counseling and Education website, and have them listen to our podcast. So I always tell people like, okay, my job here is to convince you don't want to come. Because if I can do that, you're not meant to come kind of thing. I mean, I don't tell them that, but I said, so I'm trying to weed people down. So we interview people that really feel like they're drawn to this work. And so I told her, I said, so what I'm telling everybody is go listen to that. If that something speaks to you, feels like that's a good fit for you, then give me a call and we'll set up a second interview. So she's the first one to call me back, like the next day. She said, oh, I got on and I listened to this stuff and I love it. You're not going to get rid of me that quickly. And then to top it off, I asked her, I said, well, where do you live? And Rita Schuford and I have been doing some work on Molokai, which is a very impoverished one of our islands where most people are either unemployed or underemployed. And the healthcare there is makes my island look like it's, you know, the Mayo Clinic. But when we were working there, we really felt drawn to work there. So I said to her, I said, what island are you on? Do you want to work, via, internet or Zoom? And she said, oh, I live on Molokai, which is the same island, right? And I just cracked up laughing about how life is just so perfect and comes in. And I guess that's one of the things that I'm kind of really kind of awake to is, I always was, I don't know if I was taught this or I got the insight. It's been so long now, I can't remember if I should attribute this to somebody else or myself, but I just know that when you follow the feeling in you and you stay true to that feeling in your own understanding, everything kind of works out. Everything falls into place. Things happen that are the magic of life. I wrote this book with Lori Carpenos called The Secret of Love, Unlocking the Mystery and Unleashing the Magic. And to me, that's kind of the deal about anything, relationships, yourself, living your life, is that you see that there's a higher power level than you have, that's a mystery. But when you're going with that energy, magic happens. Like people come into your life, things happen, and everybody has those moments, that kind of synchronicity in life. But it's always fun when it happens. It just, to this day, it just makes me laugh a little bit and chuckle when somebody comes to me from whatever discipline. Because I said the same thing to everybody I interviewed. She was the only one who had that feeling, and when I talked to her, I got that hit. And it's like you get this, like all of a sudden you get the spark. It's like boom, and you're drawn into the moment, and you can really feel like, okay, this is the direction we're going to go. So to me, the value of understanding the principles is to really have a great life. And then if you're lucky, you might be able to share it with somebody. But if you don't take the time to really see how to live it yourself, then by the time you want to share it, you don't really know what you're sharing. You're kind of sharing other people's words. Whether they're Sidney Banks's words. I mean, I hear people that will quote Sidney Banks. Well, it doesn't matter what Sidney Banks said. It matters what you're awake to. So repeating what he said is great, but what you really want to be sharing with the world is what you see. What is it that you see? What makes sense to you? Because when you talk about what you see, there's a feeling behind that you can't get any other way. So it kind of reminds me of, those people that are, I think they're called mediums, people that kind of, the dead talk through them. That's what they say anyway. I don't know what talks through them, but when you listen to them, they'll have really good information coming out of them, but it's a dead feeling. Like there's no life to it as they're speaking. It's very kind of monotone, kind of like little inflection in their tone. But that's kind of the deal. It's like your personal understanding, that's what you bring to the table. And you got to let yourself be you and trust that what comes through you is exactly what needs to be said in that moment. Yeah. And you can't plan it ahead of time, because if you do, you're not in the moment, you're thinking about it. And what you'll say might be more positive and better for somebody than, let's say, analyzing your former life or something, but it's not going to have the same power as you coming from that space in you where you're talking about what you see in the moment and just letting it come through you. Because as soon as you try to think about it, it's going to be a little more dead. Like, how sometimes you get a new story to tell. And like I was going to, if people, came on that were new, I thought about telling the story of how I come into this. And I thought, gosh, I've told that so many times, but every time I tell it, I tell it a little differently. It comes out differently. Right. But there's something about hearing how people wake up. It's like, as you talk to people that come into this and they talk about their journey here, usually somebody talk to somebody, it's like there's these breadcrumbs that you're following, not to the oven, but to finding yourself, that you see how life is kind of pointing you in the direction to go. But when we don't understand that that's what's happening, it's a little bit like, oh, I don't know what's going on. As you see it and you come to life with it, it's like, it's so cool every time it happens. Like you're awake and alive with that. But talking from that place of not knowing is really impossible when you only have an intellectual understanding of this. Like you can't do that. Because all you can do when you have an intellectual understanding is repeat somebody else's words. So one of the things that I think is super important at this point in my life is that people see that you want to be talking about what you see, but also what are you learning from the people that you're working with? How are you putting this out in the world? Like I still see people that, like some people like, I don't see clients anymore. I only teach other people. Well, to me, I can't ever do that because I'm still learning. And I learn from each and every one of my people that I talk to. And it's different with each and every person that you talk to. And it's more fun that way. Otherwise, I'm just talking about my past, like insights I had, understanding I had. Who cares about that? Really? I mean, most of I'm getting so old, I don't even remember anymore. But I remember that feeling. And when you talk from that feeling and you really start to trust that what's coming through you is the most powerful wisdom that we have. I mean, that's it. That's all we got as a human being. We can just put it out there as best we can. And as long as you're in a better state of mind than the person you're talking to, you can help them. But it's like always seeing that, like to me, like I do programs. I'm like, we're kind of preparing for the conference in London, and Judy and I are doing a couple of things. Judy Sedgman, who I do the Psychology Has It Backwards, and people will talk to us about, ask us questions, like, do you guys have a script? Could I see your script? Oh, we laugh because we didn't have a script. We just start talking to each other. And we're like fascinated by what comes out of each one of us. We get hit back and forth. In fact, sometimes we got to say, oh, we got to tape this because we're talking and we don't have it on tape. Because what comes out of us is different each time. It's new and different. It's exciting. So one of the things that I think people have to remember is it's not about teaching people the principles. It's about helping people to see how to live their life in a way that they're happy, that they're content, that they're living in peace. And people then come to an understanding of the principles from that experience. But if you're teaching people the principles in order to get a good feeling, you're doing it backwards. It's just as backwards as any other thing in psychology. So as people see that they've got that feeling in them, and how you talk about that might be different from person to person, they wake up and then they see the principles in them. And that's the That's the dance we do. That's the dance we do. Because it may be that the person is listening. It may be that they're not ready to listen. Maybe the best thing, like I've got some people I work with that are going so fast, because a lot of times we get people that are really having a major malfunction with their thinking. And sometimes, you know, what comes out to say them is just to help them get, you know, like go for a walk, do this, and I might tell them what to do. Right. And then as they go deeper, I'm like, I don't know what you should do. But what they need is a sense of security for me to help them to get more secure. It doesn't matter that I tell them to do it. It doesn't even matter if they do it. Right. It matters that they feel like I know what I'm doing. It's kind of it. And as long as they feel that, they get more secure, and then they see what they're doing. So it's kind of always going back to your own awakeness. You know, are you happy? Are you seeing things new? Are you doing things that are fresh for you? Have you taken yourself on to go beyond what your comfort zone is? You know, like one of the things I was thinking about is, for many, many years, I worked with victims of abuse, you know, like people who were abused by people sexually, physically, and really help them to get their balance back and their good feeling back. And then I thought, you know, why am I helping people who have been hurt by people? I mean, that's great, but I should be helping people who are hurting people. Now, in my past, that's kind of like a big thought for me. You know, like, okay, I've got to see beyond all the thoughts I have about this. And so I thought, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. And so the last 2 years, 2.5 years, maybe, we've been learning more and more about working with people who are, most of the guys that are in our program are on drugs. They're pretty, they've been in prison. They've been on probation many times. They've gotten in trouble. They just get in trouble a lot. That's what I'd say they're famous for, is getting in trouble. And so they don't read. Many of them haven't graduated high school. They don't read, they don't write. So we've been doing things differently this time. And now what we're doing is we give them assignments. And I give, like the last one was to listen to the Great Illusion. Now, a lot of people think, oh no, I can't let people listen to Sid because he's talking too high. It's too much. These guys just absolutely love him. And they come back and start talking about the feeling they get from it. Not like parroting Sid's words, not having these little sayings that he's talking about, but really just coming back and saying this feeling I got in when I was listening to it. So the feeling of the whole group has gotten really quiet. It's kind of like, oh my God, what's going on? Are these guys getting, because we're not doing anything. They come and they talk about what they saw. And as they go around the group, they teach each other. And we just have to be there and add a little bit here, a little bit there every once in a while. But they get so much from each other. Like one of the guys, and so, I mean, he used to beat people up on a regular basis, and it was he was pretty proud of it. And he came and spoke last night, and the guy said, oh my God, I got in such a great feeling when you were talking. Talk some more. And he was just talking about what he saw on that tape. And it just reminded me that that's really kind of where it goes, is as you go deeper, those videos hit you in a different way. You see something different. But it's almost like you have to give yourself permission to start over again. Like, because if you think about it, if you start over again, you get the same insight you got the first time. There's nothing better than that, right? And that just keeps happening if you take yourself back there. Because we can form a thought system out of what we understand about the three principles. And then it's dead too. It's the right words, right? But there's no feeling behind it. And believe me, this has happened to me many, many times. It might happen to me tomorrow. You know, it's like it happens to all of us because we're all such thinkers. And we just don't realize the power that thought has yet. We're getting there. We all think we know something. What we know is about this much, what's possible. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is keep it simple, keep it ordinary. Talk about how you live your life and talk about what you know. Doesn't matter what somebody else, it doesn't matter what Christine Heath knows. Believe me, I'm going to be dead within 30 years and no one will think about me again. But if somebody else wakes up and they have their wisdom, they'll share that with somebody, and they'll share it with the next generation and the next generation. That's what's important, is that awakeness, the awakeness that we all have what we need inside of us. You can kind of tell actually how we've impacted the world, because as I'm interviewing these graduate students, one of them said, yes, I believe that everybody has everything they need within them, and blah, 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 blah. And so I asked her, I said, well, like, how do you think people access that? And she said, well, you got to change your thinking, and then you got to read stuff and do these techniques. And it's like, yeah, okay, that you can tell that the right words are there, but the depth of understanding is not there. So it's kind of always seeing, you can see how, like when I first started out, being positive in therapy was considered bad therapy. Now there's a whole positive psychology, right? So we've had an impact on the world, whether people know it or not, because we're all part of the same consciousness, right? So it comes out over here and it affects people here. So that's really all we have to do, is just really share that feeling, that state of mind, and then what comes to you from that feeling. But you can't do it backwards. You can't understand the principles to get the feeling. And I've seen that where people are saying, I've been really trying, I'm figuring it out, I'm trying so hard. Well, that's thinking to get before thought. And you just have to let go and trust that it'll come through you. And as you talk from that space before thought, other people will wake up to that, because you're just talking to yourself anyway. We're all the same thing. Questions? Have you noticed that for yourself? The importance of that?
Yeah. Yeah, Christine, I'd like to share something, because what you're first of all, the feeling from what you were just saying is so beautiful. Like, I feel it now. It's just so yummy. Do you know when I first, like 5 years ago, when I first had like what I would have called my transformation in this, was I just saw very clearly that every time I feel bad, something inside me heals it perfectly. Every episode perfectly. And it's like the law of gravity is how I would have said it. And I just have this faith in it. But just even these past couple of days, and even today, it has become more about, what I heard Sid say after he talked about the principles, kind of saying, okay, now put all that aside, look inside for this feeling. And more that I do that, what I've found that's so amazing is just the act of looking inside is a nice feeling. You don't even have to find anything specific.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tom, because people think that the insight they get is about what they were thinking about. But it's really not. It's like all of a sudden you see thought differently. And that's really what the insight is. But people then think it's about whatever that thought was, and they got to find some more to have some more insights, right?
Right.
Yeah. But it's really, I remember Sid said, it's like an insight is to see from within. And when that happens to you, you see how thought works. You know, like one of the women I was working with said that all of a sudden she noticed all of the negative thinking she'd been doing. Now she'd been, you know, listening to tapes, reading books, doing all this, but she didn't have that, that moment where she saw what she was doing. And when you see that, you can't think your way there. You just gotta like pray and say, okay, you know, I want to see this differently. And when you see it, it's an amazing feeling.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with what you think the insight was about.
Totally.
Like I remember when I first heard Roger Mills talk, it was like, to me, all of a sudden, all of the moments of my life that I had taken personally and thought was a validation of my insecure thinking, I realized I was seeing thought, my thought. And so that's how life looked, and it cracked me up, you know, because I thought, oh my God, this is just me thinking. I'm seeing my own thoughts in them. But that's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that up, because it's funny how we get thoughts about, like one of my girlfriends when we were first learning this was one of the nurses from the original veterans hospital when Dr. Suarez went into that hospital and started teaching them about stress. And so we were roommates in Hawaii, and she was like very quiet, but you could see her mind was really busy. And I said to her, I said, you need to get quiet. And she goes, I haven't said a thing. And I was like, oh, for goodness sakes. Now she was she had some of the most beautiful feelings of any person I knew, but that was just a blind spot, that she was thinking that being quiet was not talking. So you never know how people are hearing what you're saying. And what they hear might not even be what you said, but it doesn't matter, because if they get an insight from it, they see from within what they're doing. That's where the power is. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. I just love the work you've been doing, Tom, for 3PGC. Thank you for all that you're doing. It's great.
Oh, you're welcome. I get far more than I give.
That's true. Me too.
Amazing. Thank
Yeah.
you for having me.
Yeah, no, me too.
Christine, I have a question.
Okay.
I've been listening to your podcast. It's lovely, and I feel that sort of real-time conversation, you know, that spontaneous, that coming through. It's really beautiful, and I enjoyed that very much. There is no excess, you know, no. It's quite concise in a way. I listened to your episode about slowing down. And I had these moments where my mind got really quiet, and then I start kind of flowing really nicely, and then I start getting busy again. Mm-hmm. So it's not just about slowing down, it's slowing down and staying slow. How do I do that? Why do I start up again?
I don't know. I don't know, because I don't know anybody that does that all the time. It's just that over time you get slower, but you don't realize it.
I got slower to the point that sometimes, you know, if I'm in a conversation with people, sometimes people are like fidgeting, and I'm just really kind of like, well, there's been a few things going on, but I noticed that the moment I got sick, so I had to slow down on purpose. It was a wake-up call, you know. I think I hear some of that in your episode too. So I really, you know, took time off. But the moment that I start feeling better, I start moving more again, and then I'm like, oh, I'm not fully recovered yet. So it's taking me longer to recover because of that stopping and starting and all of that. So yeah, I just take time to just let everything kind of like slow down. But at some
Okay.
point I would speed up again.
Well, this is the thing, Anna, is that you're already onto yourself, right? Because you can see that you're speeded up. When people don't see they're speeded up, I get more concerned about it, because that means you're listening. So you notice it, and that's how you change it. Because when you notice it, then you go back to that feeling, you slow down again. Like for me, one of the things I did was I just took a really hard look at my life and said, what am I doing? I can't keep working at this pace and keep a good feeling. So that's how you kind of take yourself on. Like you have to listen to yourself and say, okay, what can I do? And then open it up to your wisdom to come in to tell you what to do. But if you're trying to figure out what to do, that's backwards.
Well, so sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, because you already have quieted down, or you wouldn't notice when you speed it up.
Yeah.
So it's just having that awareness, like, oh yeah, I'm going too fast, because we all live in this world we've created, which is entirely too much information, entirely too many busy minds, entirely too much attachment to our intellect. And so we're all impacted by that to X degree. So when you see that you've kind of taken down the primrose path again, you wake yourself up and come back. And then just take a look and say, okay, I got caught up in my thinking again. What do I need to change? What do I need to see different? And then wait for it to come to you. And it'll hit you between the eyes if you do that.
The thing that touched me the most about your episode was that you say something about I'll relax once that I'm done. You know, I'll be done with this and then I'll relax. I was like, oh yes, I do that too. I'll relax once that my business is making this much, or I'll relax once that, and it's like postponing that peace, you know, just taking.
Well, that's the great illusion, right? Is that we're always trying to do something in order to get to our natural state, to be happy, to be calmer, to be happy, secure, all of those things. So that's just how we get caught up. It's like, I want to see how to quiet down so that I can feel better. Just go to feeling better. Take yourself by the hand and say, hey, what does it feel like just to be present, to really let go of some of the beliefs I have about how much work I need to do, or how much worry I need to do, or whatever your habits are. And it's just, you know, like it keeps happening. You know, I first learned from Roger Mills in December of 1980. And my sisters came and visited me 3 weeks ago. And my sister called me up afterwards and she said, I want you to know that you're the best self I've ever known in you. And I said to her, oh, you like my hair like this? I'm totally thinking about how I look, right? Because, you know, that's my thing, my vanity. And she goes, no, I mean you as a person and how you are in life. I said, oh, thank you. Now, I wasn't trying to do that, but just by virtue of what we see, how we trust what we know, how we live our life in the desire of being healthy, how that then plays with us is different at different times in your life. Like there's different opportunities for seeing how to be in a good feeling. And each one of those becomes like your own personal school, learning about yourself and how to live there. But I think people get an idea that there's kind of a like this is where I want to get. And no matter what this is, there's always more beyond that. So if you're waiting to get there to feel okay, you'll be waiting for Godot. You know that play about Godot? Yeah. So it's like you gotta live in the now and be grateful for what you see. And then be open for more as you're going in the direction. Like Sid says in one of his tapes, he goes, point yourself in the general direction and then do nothing. But it's the doing nothing we have trouble with. We want to help.
I've seen it play out. Actually, I realized that slowing down is very productive in a different way. So I really, yeah, I just wonder about, well, I guess you said at the beginning, it's just the awareness of it is the right direction. So I'll point there. I'll stay there.
Right. Right. And it's just that little thought process we have where we like to kind of judge ourselves. You know, like, wisdom isn't on demand. You can't like, okay, I want to see how to do this right now. It's like the less you care about it, the more you see. As long as you're going toward that feeling. But again, you have to be home and listening to you. Listening to the feeling you're in. And also knowing the signs. Like I can tell the signs. Like I'll double schedule a client or something. That's always a sign for me I'm going too fast. Because that's how it comes out in me. So you got to get to know yourself. That's the thing. Listen to yourself, understand yourself, so that when you do it, you don't get tricked so easily. Otherwise, those old thoughts come in and they're like, oh, and you're like, oh, really, over there? You know, and it's like, it just gets kind of, you get caught up in it, but everybody does that.
Good. Thank you so much.
Whatever you're doing, keep doing it because you're doing great.
Thank you. I feel good. I feel good, and sometimes out of that, I just get super excited. I was telling someone yesterday, I'll finish quickly. I get to this art studio where everything is available to me, and I don't know what to create first. And my teacher is like, "Oh, you're very creative." And I say, "I know," but sometimes it turns into anxiety because my mind is going faster than what I can physically do, and all of that. So I just, you know.
Yeah, it's very easy for us because excitement is coming from thinking, right? And when you get excited about things, it flips over into insecurity really easily because we're in thought. So you just got to pay attention to that. Yeah, like, oh, okay, relax. Rick?
Hey, so I turned slowing down into a technique, and kind of in a funny way, in the sense that I'm playing with the idea of, like follow the feeling, getting a feel for me, right? The kind of the like when things need speeding up and when things needed being slowing down. And one a funny story was that I'm trying to get my dad motivated to get to his eye appointment, and I could feel myself getting anxious about getting him motivated to get going, right? He's 93 years old, so he's got his own speed. Um, so I'm feeling, no, Rick, slow down, like slow down, right? Okay, and then as we're driving, I keep looking at the clock, and I keep looking, and I keep saying to myself, no, just keep slowing down, just keep slowing down. While I was doing this, keep slowing down, I noticed that traffic was passing me. Like not just one or two cars, but all the traffic was passing me. And I started to laugh, and my dad says, "Why are you laughing?" And I says, "Well, everybody's passing me." And he says, "Well, they must be all in a hurry." And I looked at my speedometer, and I was going the speed limit, but for me, it was kind of a bit of a joke about like paying attention to what is really going on, right? And I think I had a tendency of overusing, like, like that slowing down as a go-to kind of a thing, like rather than really paying attention that, oh, okay, well, there is type of flow to life right now. Okay, so let's speed up. So like, let's get into the flow of the traffic. And I've been finding that more and more in various other aspects of my life is that there's a type of flow that I will naturally fall into when I let go of that I have to be in any particular shape or form or attitude,
That's right.
because the feeling will tell me if I'm in the right channel or not.
Right.
And as long as I'm paying attention and noticing, traffic passing me, well, it might be a clue that maybe I should pick up, just a little bit, right? Like I'm allowed to go maybe 10 kilometers over the speed limit. But anyways, we did get on time. Right on time. Imagine that, eh? But there is this feeling that I'm finding in life, and just paying attention to it is, I'm finding that alone is enough, as opposed to, oh, I have to do something. I don't have to do anything, really. Just pay attention. Anyway.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's great. That's a great insight. Because it's just interesting how our little pea brain gets in there and likes to make up a story about what it is we know. And so we can get into like little habits, like it worked for me once, so now I'm going to do this every time. And then it's like it doesn't come from wisdom anymore. It becomes like a thing you got to think about. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. And that's kind of the deal, is for us to live in this world that we're creating in a way that's healthy and positive. And, we think of others and we work well with others. It's like you have to get out of yourself. It's just that we all like to think about ourselves so much that that's what gets in the way.
I on a walk a couple of days ago, I have what I call it sort of my meditated walks with my dog, and the thought of my mother used to say something when I was quite young, and I'm sure it was under a different context, but she used to say to me, "Get over yourself."
Right. That
And
was very good wisdom, wasn't it?
it was, holy shit. I mean, man, oh man, it hit me in such a different way a couple of days ago. It was sort of like, she was right. Like that's exactly what my role is, is to notice it, get out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, self-conscious, selfish, self-indulgent, it's like all of those things are descriptions of insecurity in us.
Yeah.
Of course it was, because what's in our intellect is all our memories, our thoughts, everything we've collected. So it's kind of like our own personal AI,
Yeah.
right? And so we go to that all the time to get something new, but there's nothing new there. New comes into the world in the moment from our wisdom.
And that's what I love about, the whole AI bandwagon, right? Well, the A stands for artificial.
Right.
We
Right.
talked about the illusionary world, right?
Yeah.
And that artificial intelligence is only as smart as the bundle of programming, right?
That's right. And it can't know beyond that. That's what worry is. You're going to memory to tell you what to do in the future, and there's nothing there, but you keep looking.
Oh yeah.
One more time. Let me think about it one more time. Like somehow we've got our sense of security based on our intellect. And that's like, going to Siri and ask her what you should do for employment. It's like Siri doesn't know. She'll give you an answer, but it may not have anything to do with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting to me. There's I don't know, this one guy did an interview with Sidney Banks using AI. It's very creepy because it was like, the kind of the way he would talk, but there's no life there. It's like you could just, the feeling's not there, right? And that's kind of for ourselves too. You can tell when you're awake. And you can tell when you're asleep, but not until you're awake. Because when you're asleep, you can't tell it, right? So it's kind of like just like I'll say like, Chris, have you laughed lately? You know, because my habit when I get insecure is I get serious. Like, what are they doing now? What's going on? You know, and I like, let it go, lighten up. You know, because we all have to get to know ourselves, because you can't trick yourself once you're onto yourself, right? But if you're not onto yourself, you can easily trick yourself. That's great. That's great to see, Rick, because I mean, believe me, we all do this. As we learn this, we get these thoughts about the three principles. We get thoughts about healthy living. We get thoughts about innate health. But that's only based on the level you have the insight at, right? The same insight you're going to see it totally different from a different space. There's all these offshoots of people that are like adding to the principles, and one of them is I forget what they call it, but it's kind of like techniques for living in the now, which cracks me up, because as soon as you do a technique to live in the now, you're not in the now. You know, it's like, just keep it simple, like just be ordinary. That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Rick. That's a great story. I love that. Siobhan?
Hi. For me, it's just one thing that I've noticed is when I first came across the three principles, I was in my head thinking, oh, how am I going to explain that? And once I let go of it and I just started living, continue living, but just from a different space, I realized, because due to my circumstances at the time, there were certain kind of, I don't know, groups or places where I had to go to, which I had to attend. And the funny thing was, and I'm not very educated, so I realized though then I would just show up as myself, but because I was coming from a completely different space, and I know I'm not special, we are all the same, but just from the space that I came, it ended up many times that even the person who would facilitate something in the end will look to me, to what I will say, because that's what actually would help the group. And that was just simply by showing up from that space and finally believing I'm okay and trusting what is coming from within. And there was never any effort. And which is so beautiful, because that's how then doors opened to now actually do what was in my heart and hopefully be able to share the three principles in certain settings. But it all started just by showing up as myself, and then that was kind of somehow noticed, and then they wanted more, but I actually did not have to do anything for it. It was just showing up, living, and I don't know, that contentment or happiness, whatever it is, because of obviously the circumstances at the time, we were all having similar backgrounds, but just because the way this allowed me to show up through the insights that I might have had, it just kind of then opened a door to speak to people, which is really, I don't know, a very beautiful experience, because it makes it very simple and very beautiful at the same time, because you can, I can't really explain it, but that's just something that I noticed. But just,
well, there's a presence.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean by presence? It's like when somebody's very present and in a beautiful feeling, other people are attracted to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of, to me, it's like the feeling that comes through you commands respect.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's the same feeling in the people that are looking for that feeling. Like, to me, everybody's looking for that feeling to X degree, right? And so when you show up and you're coming from that feeling, even if you're talking about, mashed potatoes and gravy, people will be like, oh, really? Oh, like sometimes it cracks me up. I'll have to go to a meeting for some state rules or something that I have to do. And I'll like be listening, and then I ask a question and they go, oh, that's really a good question. I go, oh, really? Like, it doesn't even occur to me that that's a good question. It's just what I want to know more information about, right? And so it kind of sometimes makes you seem like you're smarter than you are, because your wisdom comes through, because intellectually you don't know, but your wisdom comes through and you ask a different question, or you connect with somebody at a deeper level, and pretty soon you find yourself talking about what you know about the truth of life.
Yeah.
And I think to me, that's but the other thing that I thought of when you were talking was that I think that a little bit about what we've kind of gotten caught up in is teaching the principles or sharing the principles. But if you're really just sharing how experience is created in human beings, how experience is generated, you'll talk about it without mind, consciousness, and thought. Like, who cares about that, really? I mean, when I first learned this, we didn't have three principles. We just, this is how it works. Notice how it works. And then as Sid went deeper, he was able to kind of codify that into the three principles. But now people are learning the three principles and then trying to get insight, right? So the more you're just talking from that feeling, like you said, it's like you want to listen to yourself and then you'll go deeper. Like my teacher would tell me, I'd call him up and I'd be, oh, my mind's going so fast. I'm so crazy, blah, blah, blah. And he'd go, oh, geez, Chris, go do a session and go listen to yourself. I was like, oh, what a great idea. Because I knew that the wisdom that came through me was not Christine Heath's memories. It was something beyond that. And my wisdom informs my intellect. But most people are trying to get their intellect to inform their wisdom. In fact, I was listening to something on NPR, National Public Radio, and I kind of tuned in halfway through. It was a brain guy talking about how the brain worked and things like that. And she was talking about it, and she said, you know, sleep is very important for us. And she was going through the reasons that we need to sleep. And she said, and there's this amazing thing that happens is that your brain turns into wisdom and creates wisdom. And I was like, what? So that got my attention. So now I'm listening. And she said, yeah. She said, you know how you can have a problem in the evening and you can't figure it out. And then you go to bed and you get a good night's sleep. And when you wake up, you either don't see a problem or you know exactly what to do about it. So that's your brain turning into wisdom. And I was like, oh, she's almost there. You can see she's almost there, right? Instead of seeing like, oh, you get into a better state of mind and then your wisdom comes forth and you see things differently. So it's kind of like people are kind of coming back this way. And I see that a lot of us, and me too, you know, we get kind of caught up in trying to fix things so that we can find that feeling. You have to get to that place where you don't care about it. Like you just really know that the feeling you're in and what you can see in the moment, that's as good as you got. And as long as it's more than the other person is seeing, you'll be able to help them. And that's it. That's all you need, because they have everything they need inside of them. They just need to wake up to it. So it's waking up to how this all works, where the power is, not talking about the principles. That's beautiful. That's a great example of that. So you can go anywhere. You go anywhere and you talk to people in any situation and you don't share, but then somebody comes up to you and says, you're talking a little differently. What is it that you're talking about? And then you can give them a little bit. If they take it, you give them a little bit more. They take it, you give them a little bit more. And then as my teacher said, if they choke, you tell a joke and leave them laughing.
Thank
You
you.
leave them with a good feeling. You just leave them with a good feeling. That's the point of that, right? Because they may be ready now. They may not be ready now. They may be ready and come back and say, when you said blah, 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 it just hit me what you meant. And you just never know when that wisdom is going to pop. That's why I always say that people are like popcorn. I mean, I grew up my dad ran a theater, so I used to make popcorn. And so popcorn is a good analogy for me, but you know, you put popcorn in the microwave, pop, and some of it pops right away, you know, and then other stuff pops later on. And then sometimes you take it out of the microwave and a few kernels will pop, and some of them sizzle. You put them back in, frequently they'll pop, but not always.
Yeah.
And that's the deal. It's like, it's not our job to get people to pop. Our job is just say, if you look that direction, you might pop. And then it's up to them to see that, because it's very easy for people to think that you're going to fix them.
Mm.
You know, and that, and the other thing I hear with people is that they're trying to get it. You see people that are just like, they've been to every training there is, and they've listened to every SID tape and read every book, and they're suffering because they're not seeing how to keep it simple in their own personal life. It's just about living your life. And if you get ahead of yourself and you think, I'm going to learn this so I can make a lot of money as a 3 principles coach, you are going to be very disappointed. Because who knows what path you're on. That's the fun of it. Oh, I'm going to be doing this. Oh, this person's. I mean, that's kind of the unknown is where it's at. But when you start to make it be about something, now it's your shtick. And it will only have the power that you give it. People won't wake up to that. Like frequently people, if you ever notice this where you're talking to somebody and kind of off the cuff, you say, oh, it's just thought anyway, or something like that. And they go like, what? You know, they kind of wake up to it. And you're like, what did I say? I didn't even say that, you know? You just see that there's really very little power we have over helping somebody else to wake up. All you can do is just live it yourself, be darn grateful for your life and for the feelings you've awakened to, and live your life. Be a good person, help other people, share it as best you can. You operate in life from that feeling.
Yeah. And if I can say one more thing, if you don't mind.
Oh,
My children and me on the way to school this week, we always walk through a path, and then they always been telling me, but I think I was so focused on let's get to school. But there's a lot of trees, and then there's a metal fence, and it kind of the fence went through some of the trees, and then you could see basically the marks of the fence in the tree, and it looked kind of bruised and everything. And then my daughter was saying something so beautiful. She said, Mommy, I'm sad for the tree, but I'm also proud of the tree because it continued to grow. And then we spoke about resilience. And it was just so beautiful because my kids saw it for themselves. And so you can focus either on these bruises where whatever life has put at you, or you continue to grow. And then it was like, yeah, and the tree did that all by themselves. And it's nice because it was really nice for them then to understand you have it within yourself, if that makes, yeah.
What a beautiful thing to share with your children. That's just great. And it's like this for her, like seeing that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like, wow, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrific. I mean, and that's it. Like that becomes a good story then. You know, as you share this with other people, your stories of things that you see that happen to you, that's got the biggest bang for your buck.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about Christine Heath's story, it's going to be like, man, because you don't have feeling behind it, right? But your stories, whatever they are, that's where you're seeing the truth in life. And that's how we wake up. That's beautiful, Siobhan. Thank you for sharing that. It's a great story. And that's the simplicity of it too, isn't it? Like you didn't have to prepare for that. Okay, now what am I going to say to my children when they notice this thing, right? It's like it just comes out. That's why they call it common sense. It's a sense that's common to all of us. Beautiful.
Wow. Thank you, Christine, and everyone who's participated in this beautiful conversation, and to all of you who are present. And Christine, I just really want to acknowledge and thank you for your generosity as a teacher and sharer of the principles, and in your role on the board of the 3PGC. Just
Oh, thank you.
wonderful
But
service.
it's
to the
really
world.
my pleasure. I like to say it came from being altruistic, but I get so much out of it myself that it's very selfish.
Yeah.
You know, and there's nothing more fun than this to me than this.
Mhm.
And, you know, I figure, you know, maybe I got 10, 15 years left in me. I'm going to enjoy every minute. I mean, not that I'm going to die in 10 or 15 years, but at some point in time, I'll probably have to give up talking to people. But, you know, until that happens, I'm going to enjoy every minute of it, because it's just the potential we have to learn and to go deeper. You know, like when my sister told me that, like, oh, you're the best you could be, I was like, oh, that's so cool, because I didn't even try. You know, I wasn't trying to be happier. I wasn't trying to be wiser. I wasn't trying to be more present. I was just, in fact, I thought I was a little busy while they were here, because I was trying to take care of them and take care of the dogs and do everything. And so I thought that was really funny. But thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate it.
Mhm. Okay.
And thank you guys for coming. What a nice group to have. And I appreciate all your questions. And I just, thanks for all you do for 3PGC and to help share this, your personal truth with the world. I really am grateful for that.
Mm.
Eric, what are you doing up this late?
I know it's late, Chris, but I couldn't miss you. I couldn't miss you. I've done the late shift today, and yeah, it's a beautiful thing to come home to. So thank you for that, Chris. Thank you.
See you. Good to see
Likewise.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Aloha.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Christine.
Bye bye. Thank you, Chris.
Ahui ho.
Thank you, everyone else. Bye.